With Kirby's return to Dreamland setting the standard for modern Kirby bosses, it was Deluxe's purpose to build on that foundation and explore what those enemies can bring to the table. Freshly added backgrounds and the 3D effect promised some multi-layered puzzles, but how would the bosses take advantage of the evolved design philosophy of the 3DS? Deluxe may dwell in the shadows of its much more popular modern entries, like Planet Robobot or Return to Dreamland, but presents the probably best bosses in any two-dimensional Kirby games. A brave assumption to make regarding all the quality titles in the series, but you will definitely understand by watching each placement to the end. As usual, I'm going to combine every regular boss with their DX counterpart, since they only slightly change the initial fight and don't warrant their own ranking. Also, every unique supernova battle will also be ignored and not counted as a true boss due to their simplistic nature. One of the most infamous bosses in the series for all the wrong reasons. Pyit resembles a frog-like creature dwelling at the end of the last regular world in an active volcano. His appearance might be on the harmless side, but all the fiery attacks prove the opposite, and he really gives his position of guarding the final world justice. Due to being so versatile, it's quite common to see this boss jump between fore and background periodically, which may be a strong point for other following foes on this list, but Pyit's downfall, as you have probably guessed, having to wait for the boss to give you a chance to strike back can become quite annoying, especially regarding how often this frog likes to disappear. Almost all of his attacks strike from the background, which does not necessarily make the fight harder, but simply more drawn out. Another reason why so many people do not enjoy this boss has nothing to do with Deluxe as such. Normally I try to leave out other Kirby games when it comes to discussing bosses, since another game's hiccup has nothing to do with the topic we are talking about, but it's just too tempting to miss out for this exception. The free-to-play spin-off title Super Kirby Clash for the Switch is a collection of one of the most iconic bosses of modern Kirby, and Pyit is a part of this best-of. The fray is basically unchanged, with the main difference of having a timer on every clash. You're probably aware what I try to say. The constant jump between fore and background clashes directly with the time pressure of Super Kirby Clash, which makes the Pyit missions one of the most frustrating ones in the game. Whether or not it was intentionally done does not really matter, since once again it's not adding to the challenge and raises frustration. Still, there are some strong qualities, like his special trump card summoning lava mountains similar to the one of the bosses of Kirby 64, or modding your view after shooting with a massive flamethrower. Fighting this extraordinary boss for the very first time, there's actually not too much to complain about, but in the unique context of the series and consideration of other titles, you will certainly start to despise this nimble frog quite quickly. No Kirby game without a wispy battle, and this time it's the colorful counterpart Flowery Woods, emerging from a timid flower manipulated by the magic power of Taranza. What is so memorable about this rendition is the fact that Flowery was most likely the first time a Wispy Clash tried to offer something beyond the tutorial boss. Usually in the past we only received smaller gimmicks that were certainly nice touches, like the chase sequence of Kirby's Dream Land 3, but didn't quite make the Wispy battle that fantastic. When starting the assault, you would actually get the same impression about Flowery, but just like with basically every modern Kirby boss, the true fight starts when entering the second phase. All all of a sudden Flowy jumps to the background, something I did not see coming when first playing the game. Theoretically, only very few moves have changed as they make use of the 3D effect, but don't become harder to dodge. The highlight are the long, flexible roots with two giant Oshis catching you off guard if you're not prepared for their smash. It may sound like Flowy suffers from the same fate as Pyit by staying too long in the background, but whenever you get the chance to strike back, there's enough time to end the battle quite quickly. Flowy Woods essentially set a new standard for upcoming Wispy Woods fights and truly elevated the once so plain, standardized rivalry into something worth talking about. Just like Flowy, Kreko portrays one of Kirby's all-time rivals, with the main difference that this is his first major appearance in a modern, traditional mainline title. Similar to his wooden colleague, nothing seems to be too noteworthy at the beginning, as Kreko only uses some easy-to-avoid electric shocks and dash attacks. When it's time to step up the game, of course this boss also makes use of the background. Unlike with every other boss though, Kreko requires you to switch layer due to a giant thunder shock crossing the whole battlefield. It adds tension to the fight, and small bottomless pits can even end the run in an instant. A small detail many players are probably not aware of is how the game lowers the difficulty when it thinks you have troubles. The bottomless pits will be filled out, something I'm not too fond of, but it was likely already brave enough for a modern Kirby game to even add those traps. Still, Kreko is not depending on those small obstacles and carries some more surprises in his lofty body. These little spikes turn into huge drills, perfect for some fast dashers. It may not be hard to counter, but looks all the more impressive instead. Since then, there was only Star Allies giving this resistant weather beast another proper try, and regarding how much potential Triple Deluxe already showed, we can only wonder what they will create next. Going by its vague theme, World 2 makes it hard to predict what kind of opponent will await you. The game manages it to mix all the settings with interesting twists, and ignoring the level thumbnail, everything could wait to stop you. The answer is Paintra, an artistic magician with the ability to turn pictures into real objects, similar to Adeline from Kirby 64. Her design is heavily reminiscent of Drossia from Canvas Curse, which explains the similarities in skills. Still, it's not like she contains the same tricks and even makes use of the 3D effect by hindering your vision. The enemy might be small, but her arsenal of attacks seems to be endless, and I can only praise how much variety Kirby bosses bring to their fights when it comes to unpredictable techniques, not to speak of smaller Easter eggs that shouldn't be left unnoticed. Compare this hectic brawl to Return to Dreamland's second magical fray, and it becomes clearly apparent how much of an upgrade Triple Deluxe is in comparison to its predecessor. The beauty-seeking bee queen Sectonia holds the strings behind the whole premise and reveals herself to be the main antagonist after Taranza failed in his task to kidnap the hero of the lower world. not counting the slight spoiler a collectible is responsible for when trying to complete the adventure 100%, you always have the feeling something greater must be behind all this fiasco. Her design suggests a majestic yet ignorant creature with egoistic goals in mind, and this attitude is perfectly reflected in her battle. The way she moves through the arena in combination with her seductive voice, by the way it's Kirby's voice actor, emphasizes an unique style many Kirby final bosses do not go for. Another thing that separates her first battle from other bosses are the 3 distinct phases with increasing escalation. In the beginning it comes across as if she's observing your skills, without going all in any kind. Quick sword swings, classic teleportation or magical projectiles give a taste of what the queen is capable to do, but after some while it's time to shift this duel into the background on a giant crystal. Gameplay wise nothing changes too much, with the addition of some minions and new techniques. It's only after that when Sectonia seems to lose her patience and moves unpredictably through the air. These whimsical teleportations are very hard to dodge on first try, but after some while you see the pattern where she appears. Every other skill remains the same or is only slightly improved. This initial encounter is the perfect serving plate for what is to come, and after winning you clearly get the feeling this wasn't everything, since there is still an unobtrusive glooming flower in the background. For some reason, the coily Reda always struck me as a peculiar boss among the series. Something about the design, animations and premise seems so unique to me, which can only be viewed in a positive light. To increase the challenge in a minor way, it's only possible to deal damage by attacking the head, which is why the archer ability might be an ideal recommendation regarding the precise use of arrows. Even so, you still have to dodge the quick, unpredictable patterns of the ancient snake, who will linger in every corner of the arena for sneaky attacks. As usual, the first phase holds itself back a little to introduce the stakes, but once the second phase starts, so does every part of Redler's body, and he divides himself into multiple parts to bombard you with heavy strikes. So far I haven't really mentioned it, but Triple Deluxe bosses introduce or maybe emphasize the design concept of establishing one impressive technique once the second phase starts. Normally, or in older titles, initiating the second half of the fight only means faster attacks or more aggressive behavior, and while the same goes for this game as well, it also tries to leave an impression by having those bombastic attacks that are not necessarily hard to avoid, but simply appear grandiose. It's a very clever way to increase the spectacle, and there's a reason that even today's games still follow this pattern. When the game's connection to the amazing mirror becomes clearer, it was inevitable to face off one of the main adversaries of the Game Boy Advance titles again. After beating DDD's evil counterpart, all what is left is the revenge of a foe trapped in the Dimension Mirror. Since there is no regular Metanite battle in the game, Dark Metanite is not a slight enhancement over something that already exists and is basically a reimagining of the Amazing Mirror's final sequence. At first it seems like nothing is particularly changed. The iconic heavy theme is missing, and just like with Galacta Knight in Return to Dreamland, I still feel like the modern Metanite model looks a little too clunky. For this supposed to be dangerous aura. However, similar to Galacta, Dark Metanite truly initiates his presence when halving his health. An amazing arrangement of his theme kicks in, but the true surprise is probably the complete overhaul of his moveset. While the alternative Knight kept all of his moves from the amazing mirror, for this game he upgraded his arsenal and makes use of different reflections. It's a perfect combination of the mirror theming while staying classic, and although I like to criticize Metanite-esque battles for being too similar to each other, and especially after expecting a mere one-to-one copy of the amazing mirror, I was pleasantly surprised to see that this rendition is a taste of a remake I'm still waiting for to this day. The controlled King DDD is the prelude to Triple Deluxe final and simultaneously goal for the whole game. After chasing the kidnapped King of Dreamland through 1,000 horizons, Kirby ultimately catches up and confronts Taranza at the top of Sectonia's palace. Here it is revealed that Taranza mistakenly trapped DDD, thinking he captured the hero from the lower world in order to preempt the people of the sky's plan to call for help. Of course, DDD on his own would be no match to Kirby, and with the additional help of Taranza in the background, the first of many fights at the end of the game begins. Initially, it seems like there's nothing outstanding about this encounter. DDD uses most of his well-established moves and you get the impression there's no particular challenge. The only indicator that something must be happen is the health bar, which normally starts the second phase after reaching the half. This time, however, Taranza offers the seeming hero a huge power-up, as the penguin grabs one of the axes and swings around like a madman. The mask already teased the return of the iconic mask DDD theme, but it's only now that the full force of this battle starts to come through. It becomes much more difficult to dodge, as DDD flies from back and foreground like a piece of leaf in the air. It might be a little disappointing to miss out on a proper Taranza clash, but if the fight takes long enough, there are small moments with him actually participating in the fray with additional magic, used for even more projectiles you have to be aware of. King DDD's battle may only be the appetizer to what is still to come, but fulfills his role as a gateway to one of the best climaxes in the series perfectly, by being quite challenging, fast-paced, nostalgic, and simply enjoyable. But we can obviously not forget about the secret boss at the end of DDD's own personal campaign. After going through the adventure once again, you face the Dimension Mirror, the object responsible for Triple Deluxe's whole catastrophe. Fans of the amazing mirror for the Game Boy Advance most likely remember the absence of King DDD in this experimental title. It's one of the very rare occasions where the penguin doesn't appear at all in a Kirby game, and in order to make up for this absence, it's finally time to see Shadow DDD. Most of the fight stays naturally the same and is only seasoned just like with every other DX boss, but the sheer fan service puts an extra cherry on top of this battle, and after fighting Shadow Kirby and Shadow Metanite, it was just fantastic to see the creators complete the Shadow cast with the missing final Kirby All-Star. Most people will probably not have problems understanding this position regarding the surprising nature of Sectonia's soul, but you have to observe why this secret final boss works so great. Just like always, after an exhausting run through the true arena, as it appears to be like she kept one unknown trump card not used during the regular game. Back in the day, secret final bosses were not as common as today, especially after Return to Dreamland did not use one final trick when beating Margolor. Seeing how Sectonia pulls herself out of the flower to transform into one final, flexible form gave everyone a shock at this time, and there's no supernova to save you. What follows is one last action-packed battle against Sectonia's remaining powers, which can easily end your arena run. The way she flies through the air with slight camera shifts and underlined by her insane voice really stresses the unexpected situation, and there's no time to relax or comprehend the moment. Despite the fact the music resembles the supernova phase of regular Sectonia, it starts much less triumphant this time, almost needing time to kick in the recognizable enemy, reflecting the overwhelming shock melodically. Back in the day, this secret phase caught me completely off guard, and still remains as one of the most memorable moments in any Kirby game to me. It comes across as so naturally that I get the feeling this form was maybe even planned for the regular fight. Nowadays we accept the secret final boss at the end of an arena, but after DX Sectonia started with multiple powerful fruits on her own, I thought this was more than enough for the climactic struggle. Battle-wise it becomes extremely hard once you lose your copy ability. There's almost no corner to hide, with skills assaulting from above and beyond. Naturally, classic soul attacks like the giant fireball or splitting herself up in thousands of projectiles belong to every good soul fight, and the relief after overcoming one of the hardest Kirby challenges at the point of Deluxe release is more than enough reason to justify Sectonia's soul as a second place. Just like always, it shouldn't be too surprising to see final bosses at the top of a ranking regarding how amazingly staged they tend to be, especially in modern entries. Queen Sectonia, however, might hold the candle for being one, if not the best Kirby final boss among the series. After all the events before, the build-up already sets the mood for something dangerously beautiful. Shooting Kirby through a small hole in order to reach the giant flower at the center of the planet, you already get a glimpse of the atmosphere that is going to unfold when choosing your final copy ability. Often final Kirby bosses present this horrific tone, combined with either strong, heavy soundtracks or demonic rings from hell. Mirroring the never-ending desire to beauty, Sectonia's battle is initiated with somber piano sounds, leading to an extremely underappreciated theme of sacrificing your true self for egoistic, fake ideals. As the music goes on, you get the impression of the once timid spider singing along the Moon Knight, interfered by a traditional fantastic Kirby fanfare. At some point, it feels like the music is having a conversation between Kirby's and Sectonia's theme, and there's just something so unique for the series that hasn't been recaptured yet. You do not need to have eldritch monstrosities every time in order to leave an impression, and just like with Masked DDD and Superstar Ultra, a much more personal confrontation against a past little creature with seemingly unassuming goals can have a greater impact than everything you have seen before. But how well is the gameplay doing? At first it might come across as unsatisfying to indirectly battle against Sectonia, as you primarily take out her flowers instead of targeting her main body. This isn't an issue though, as Sectonia closely watches every step and sometimes even shifts her position for more powerful skills. There's definitely not a strange disconnect, and the more the climax continues, the closer you get to the giant flower. Every attack approaches in high speed, and thanks to the bottomless pits, there's even the chance to instantly die. What I particularly enjoy, not only about this fight, but Kirby finals in general, is how you get the impression of always dodging unseen techniques. Because the whole brawl is a fast-paced exchange of blows, attack patterns rarely repeat, and there's simply not enough time to study her behavior. Mixed with a perfect sense for difficulty, Sectonia proves herself to be a worthy opponent for Kirby's first main 3DS entry, but this wouldn't be a Kirby final without one more phase. After it seems like the queen is falling, a sneaky stab behind Kirby's back catches him unprepared. Fortunately, Taranza finally faces the truth of ending this madness and helps with DDD to gather one last special fruit to activate Kirby's seemingly most powerful ability in the franchise. At this point, it's not unusual to end the climax with a respective gimmick, but Supernova's implementation is so excellently implemented, it's really hard to not praise it endlessly. While Return to Dreamland went for a more desperate, fake-out approach, Deluxe goes all out and presents a one-sided slaughter. Sectonia cannot win. Normally, you see a final struggling, pressing multiple buttons and overcoming your foes barely. However, Supernova cannot be put into this category, and plainly low diffs, one of the most powerful beings, without any sense of struggle. What makes this even more interesting is the fact that Sectonia seemingly also withhold his strength and suddenly starts to bombard you with assaults you would normally never be able to dodge. It doesn't matter if it's multiple rocks, one huge bomb, a giant laser, or the health bar. Nothing can withstand the power of endless gluttony and a determined Kirby stare. You most likely know this exciting feeling when the main character in one of your favorite shows starts to overwhelm the foe with complete dominance, and the very same can be said in this case. The sheer fact that what was needed was a mere supernova transformation, something you did throughout the whole game, is just ironic and very satisfying. Another aspect worth praising is the mere staging of this whole final moment. The way DDD and Taranza look at Kirby, knowing with complete confidence that it's over for their opponent, and change from the melancholic moonlight to triumphant racing sun, sets the spirit for something you're not ready for. The music reflects the tables turn perfectly, still carrying the sense of battle, but contrasting hard to what you heard before. The only real downside I could name is the implementation of forced motion controls, but it doesn't destroy the potential at all. The lore is obviously the icing on the cake, and after Sectonia slowly fades away by her own madness, she probably realizes that the love of the one valuing her the most was much more worth than any seeming eternal beauty. From all the rankings I have done so far, this was probably the hardest one yet. Besides one exception, absolutely every fight offers some sort of surprise and variety, while the final, as well as secret final boss, raised the level to an even higher place. Especially the top 5 could shift depending on which day you ask, but overall this ranking should rightfully prove Triple Deluxe's position of having maybe the best boss battles in the series so far.